Well, the only way I know how to do anything, John, is just to be straight. Whether you and I are talking, just sitting here together, or whether I'm on stage singing, it's the only currency that I have. I've never read a book on how to write a book, and I always seem to be starting over. I always seem to be in a position of having to reinvent myself. And I remember sitting down with this big legal pad and a sharpened pencil, realizing I had to write a book. And I was overwhelmed with the notion, and I just ran out into my woods. I live on a farm about 45 minutes south of Nashville. Spent the day in the woods and just really went into meditation and prayer about how in the world I was going to do the process, tell people about the stupid things I've done, all the mistakes, how much of my family's skeletons was I going to pull out of the closet. And the message that I got was that the life of the Judds has a voice of its own alongside of the music itself. What Winona and Ashley and I are as women, as human beings, as people, has a voice of its own. And my job was simply to sit perfectly still for as long as it took and record that. Well, the phrase enlightenment that can be described isn't really enlightenment. It's actually an old Zen adage. That's not an original thought of mine. I think perhaps what I'm saying is that words fail us. You know, words sometimes fall very short of trying to express an emotion or an experience that was so overwhelming in its portent. So enlightenment that can be described isn't really enlightenment, is taking down so many layers. I remember saying on stage one time when I was introducing a song I had written that, and this song had very deep, profound meaning to me, I simply blurted out that music, for instance, it allows us to express emotions that words can't even begin to define. And what I had, where I was personally, emotionally in the book at that stage that I made this phrase, I had realized that writing this book had become a voyage of self-discovery on a journey to wholeness for myself. So there was no way that I could express to the reader, for one thing, there was no way I could ascertain their particular level of understanding. I've been doing research in the mind-body field. I read myself. I feel very fortunate to have had the accessibility to so many subcultures in America through my various travels for the last decade. And I simply was saying that I have learned so much about myself in the process of becoming a detective in my own life and putting together this amazing emotional jigsaw puzzle of writing my life story. I sort of pulled back the curtain and was allowed to see the little girl who grew up to be me. I saw the bizarre adventuress that I was for all those gypsy years. I realized how that when I was 37 and got into country music, these dear fans, these wonderful folks out there validated me and allowed me to feel some self-worth, some confidence. That sort of was a trajectory to launch me on the next phase, which was to really delve into my own spirituality, claim my healing, do research in the mind-body connection, explore psychology, and put it all together to become a whole package. Absolutely. There's no question about it. I have the ability to, as Winona and Ashley tell me, to make lemonade from lemons. And, you know, when I was given a grim prognosis from my liver disease, I had, thank God, and I think it really comes from having unconditional love as a child. I think it comes from being raised and nurtured in a small town, in a community where I felt loved and was told I was special. So I was sort of sent out in the world as a little unit, you know, thinking, well, I can do this, I can do that. When I was given my prognosis, I knew that there's another old saying that says, when the body weeps for that which is lost, the spirit rejoices for that which it is to gain. And I just had a sense that in the middle of this grim reality I was going to go where my questions led me, and that was going to lead me on yet another discovery. I just had this insatiable curiosity about life. The title, Love Can Build a Bridge, talks about how in life we're always trying to get from A to B. There are always chasms. There are always gaps, you know. For instance, right now I'm working with the gap between the spiritual community and the scientific community and trying to talk about the mind-body connection. I try to bridge the gap between the average person. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the average person on the street who doesn't understand maybe the medical jargon and the scientific researcher about how the mind affects the body. Winona and I were trying to bridge a gap once in a very tumultuous mother-daughter relationship. I was trying to bridge a gap between poverty and some measure of financial security or safety. And I think that's what life is all about. Life really involves only about 4 basic plots, you know, birth and children and your job and death and stuff. So I have figured out that love has this transformational power. It absolutely does. Whether it's in trying to surmount hard empirical data, tests and prognosis and medical results, whether you're trying to do a small piece of personal work or some impossible dream like trying to become a country music artist, you know, in a one in a million shot. Love has this, it's no question about it, it is the greatest healer of all. It's greater than any wise books we can read. Or so many women, and this is one of the most powerful lessons that I've had to learn in my life, so many women were raised to be demure, to follow a standard, to sort of keep it within the fence posts, and to live out a role that they thought was expected of them. And when I got out to Hollywood in my 20s and found myself in a relationship with a man who turned out to be an abuser, physically abused me, psychologically tormented me, that's when I had to do that little quantum leap of faith and step out and realize that that I had worth and dignity, and I had to empower myself and realize I'm a child of the Most High God, and this isn't what He wants for me. And I have talked to so many women. I really cherish my female friends, by the way. They're very important to me. Absolutely. My friend Oprah Winfrey once said that the thing that disturbs her most is that women allow men to run their lives and they don't acknowledge their own personal power. They say that my life story is really stranger than anything any Hollywood screenwriter could dream up. And don't you find, I mean, you're such a reader yourself, you know that real life is stranger than publicity. I have a very bizarre biological, chronological clock. I seem to have done everything completely out of rhythm and rhyme to other people. You know, married at 17 before my senior year of high school. I was 37 before we ever got into country music. Put myself through college in my 30s. Got myself off welfare. But I just live fully in the moment. I practice what's called mindfulness. For instance, noticing your tie. You know, even though we're in a TV studio and there's a TV camera over here, I have learned, and I think I've always been this way, John, I just have this very vivid imagination, and I really experience all 5 senses. When you live fully in the moment, and you're cognizant, and you're really present with yourself and your immediate surroundings, you get tantalized by the possibility of adventure. And I'm always saying to myself, what if, you know? What if I go over and speak to this person? What if I take this job? What if we get in the U-Haul and move to Texas and check out country music in Texas, you know? That's just the way I live my life. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I really don't. Winona and Ashley say that I'm actually a backwards pioneer. I seem to be going back and rediscovering things all the time. I just came from New York, where I helped her get her, she's got an apartment down in the Village, and I ran out like a proud mom, you know, getting a wastebasket and a shower curtain and scrubbing her floors and everything, getting her settled in and building a nest because she's going to be a star on Broadway. She just took William Inge's play lead for Picnic. And I was telling you off mic that I'm so proud of Ashley because she has so much integrity. I've raised both the girls to believe in personal excellence, which is to be differentiated from success. I think success is the report card that society puts on us. What kind of car do you drive? What's your job? You know, who do you hang with? But Winona and Ashley believe that a commitment to personal excellence is soul satisfying, that that's what's real and meaningful in life. So she turned down this huge budget, big studio picture to do a Broadway play. Today she's getting her hair chopped off and dyed blonde. I can't wait to see that. And next week I'm going to go out and do Sisters with Ashley. She's had for the last 2 years a feature in an NBC hit series called Sisters on Saturday nights. And they've been trying to get me for a couple of years to do some acting with Ashley. And I really haven't wanted to mess with that. Ashley is very autonomous. She wanted to make it on her own. In fact, she didn't want anyone to actually know that she was one of those Judds, because she wanted to make it on her own merit. So it's going to be her final episode because she's asked to be released from her TV contract so she can concentrate on film work. But I couldn't resist. I'm going to go out and be in the last episode with her. It was very few people, I think, John, will ever have something like that happen to them. I felt as if I was being unplugged from life support because the stage was really, the career was actually a metaphor for life itself with me. It was as if all the garbage that I had survived in my life, as I said, we didn't get into the career till I was 37 years old, being on welfare, feeling like I was just a face in the crowd, completely anonymous, feeling so alone so much of my life, friendless at times, struggling to keep a jar of peanut butter on the table for my children, being beaten by a man that I loved. Just at one time, you know, my mother didn't speak to me for almost 7 years, which was excruciating to me. All the stuff I'd been through, let alone the life-threatening disease. And in that moment, I was afraid I was going to collapse into a sobbing heap on the stage as we were getting ready to sing our last song together. I just felt like life is horribly unfair sometimes, but change really is the true nature of this world. And we have to sort of free fall into that. And I'd just been hanging on by my fingernails the whole concert until that last song. But when I looked into Winona's face and realized that she was losing it, she had no voice, and this last song, Love Can Build a Bridge, required the highest range vocal challenge of any of our songs. The old maternal instinct, once again, saved my butt, because it was like flipping a switch inside my head. When I saw my child drowning, when she was in trouble, I completely came out of myself, and my whole motivation, everything was just to bolster her. So I wrapped my arm around her, and I made eye contact with her. I just locked into her, and I said, the deepest source of your identity is not being my daughter. It's not being my child. It's not being a Judd. The deepest source of your identity is the Lord. And in that moment, the underpinning strains of Love Can Build a Bridge, our church choir was behind us, and I just felt like the stage was being levitated. It was really an ethereal, transcendent moment. It was a sacred moment. Nothing will ever outshine its brilliance.